Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento. And if you wonder what it takes to master your craft and become one of the go-to people in your industry, then you're in for a real treat in today's episode because we are being joined by an industry titan. His name is David Drucker. Let me introduce you to him. David is the CEO of High Resolution Printing, which is a print consultancy and production management firm. Serving bi-coastal clients, he partners with creative executives and blue chip brand managers at the strategic level to enhance printing, packaging, and signage productions. Nearly 40 years of experience and deep technical knowledge of specialty printing directly translates into remarkable end products. And what I really love about David, not only is he a ton of fun, you guys are going to love his energy, you're going to love his perspectives, but this is someone that I can tell loves his industry and furthering it, moving it forward. He is very much a thought leader in this space, whether it's on podcasts that he does or he wins a ton of industry awards. Honestly, it's been hard to keep up with all of my research on him ahead of today's conversation. Everything that I find points to the fact that this is someone who loves being incredible at what he does and loves passing his knowledge and expertise on to others. So we're all in for a treat because we're going to be on the receiving end of that today. So I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with David Drucker. All right, David, I am so very excited that you're here with us today. First things first, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you very much. And I'm very excited to be spending this time with you.
Heck yes. David, my only complaint in every episode is that it is way too quick. Time absolutely flies by. So let's get into the good stuff. Take us beyond the bio. Who's David? How'd you start doing all these cool things?
I started in this company in 1983. I was 23 at the time. And I really didn't have any print production experience or sales experience or business experience. I just had gotten into it because I don't like listening to people bark orders at me. And it just seemed like the right time. And I was in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan, which is like Varick and Spring. And that area is loaded, at that time, was loaded with printing companies. So I would go in every morning at 6:30 in the morning and visit all the different printers on the different blocks and really begin to educate myself. And you begin to look at the equipment that they have, and their equipment runs, money is in the commodity. But I began to look at that equipment and say, well, how can we do the next level up? And I began to verbalize that, and people began to take note. And most of what I was producing then was new to me, and I was learning as we were going along. So eventually the larger printing companies, work they couldn't do was sent to me, or work they didn't want to do was sent to me. And in having those conversations with clients, I would ask them, well, what do you think that if we change the element here, or maybe put it on a different press because we're going to get a different result? And the end result of that was that it just kept building and building and building to the point that we were recognized for doing not only the odd jobs, but perfecting the norm. So we're 42 years into it now.
Yeah, I love that backstory for so many reasons. But David, it sounds like you knew for a long time that you were unemployable. You were always meant to be an entrepreneur. And I think that that's so clear in everything I've seen about you and your work is that you love being at the forefront of it. You love pushing buttons, asking questions, finding different solutions and results. And I really want to start there because I feel like you've already called out one of the entrepreneurial secrets, which is we're always learning things on the fly. And it sounds like that was part of your superpowers when you first started, was the fact that you were learning the industry at the same time, which I would imagine it's really a balance of two different things, which is I want to learn how printing is done, of course, but also I'm new. And so I have this fresh perspective and maybe I don't want to do things the way that they've always been done. How much has that applied both in the world of printing and in the world of entrepreneurship for you?
Without a doubt. I had to prove myself to the buying community. And in looking at a production, somebody would share a file with me, or at that point it might have been a sketch. and I'd be able to decipher how we were going to do it. But I also wanted to see on my end if I could bring that up to an artisan level. What can we add to it? My theory is that our clients don't know what they don't know. And unless somebody is continually feeding them information about what's out there, our playing field has really changed, because in New York, which is where I'm talking about, we had sales reps that would walk around and they'd show you papers and they'd show you, fabrics and new techniques. But throughout the United States, you don't necessarily have that. As a matter of fact, in New York, you don't have that anymore either, because nobody is in a quote unquote office. Everybody is working remotely. So the key here is to be able to feed information to clients and to prospects, let them know what is available to use, and perhaps the inspiration that I get from them, I can give back to them, and we can actually take a production and completely change the direction it was originally going in. And that's really a forte, is being able to foresee what the production is, who the audience is that it's going to, and what the audience's reaction is going to be to that production. Now, we're not necessarily talking about commodity printing, a standard brochure. Those are really too simple. We're talking about, packaging or signage, or, just in doing a metal sign, adding a tiny touch of lighting to it, behind it, or on it. And that really, somebody walking past the store sees that signage light up. Well, that's something to be remembered. And if it's being remembered, then we've actually done our job. So I want people to see what we produce as something different, take note of it, understand its haptics, meaning how it feels, how you react to it, how it's presented. All of those play in factor to what seems to be somewhat simple. Hey, it's a box. So what? It's a box. But if the box doesn't have perfectly square edges, or the decoration that's on the box isn't beautiful, then somebody might critique that as saying, oh, well, these people really didn't know what they were doing. And therefore, it kind of kills that whole wow factor. So, we're very, very particular about how we produce it. And, we've developed that reputation of, hey, go to David. He's the guy that's going to take it on and make it what it should be.
Yeah, even hearing the way you talk about the end results of the things that you produce and create and bring into the world, I feel like that's so revealing about your approach to it. But I want to put your reputation and that word of mouth to the side for a second, because David, hearing you talk about these things, it takes me back to one of my earliest frustrations as an entrepreneur. I started my first business when I was 19, and I remember so frequently after sales conversations, I would just think to myself, oh, if these people only knew how good I was, then I would be able to get the sale. And I feel like that problem is even further exacerbated in your industry, because you're right, so much of it is you have to touch it, you have to see it, you have to feel it, you have to experience that. And I would imagine that, if your core competencies are best of quality and best of service, those things don't shine through before people have experienced that. How do you show them that value? Because I would imagine, hearing you talk about a box, for example, packaging, well, you're preaching to the choir. I love good packaging. To me, that will lead me to a product. I will literally buy something that has amazing packaging. Even a credit card that I got the Citi Prestige credit card. David, it was delivered to me as if it was like a Christmas gift that I was receiving. It made me feel so valued as a client. But a lot of people might be in the marketplace saying, it's just a box. Why am I going to invest money in a box? I'll compete on price. I'll make my decision on price. How the heck do you stand out when people can't see it and feel it and touch it?
It's really difficult, especially in the sales presentation, because I would go, when we were in Manhattan, my client base was strictly Manhattan, so I would go up to see a client and I'd bring up, like 10, 15 samples, and they'd have the opportunity. Now, the samples might not have anything to do with the project that they want to produce, but showing those samples, it starts a conversation, and that conversation might lead us into a direction that none of us expected it to go. And that's really what I look for. I just look for people to look down and say, well, I like this element, I like this element, and I didn't even know that we could do that. And so it's changed now, because a lot of what we do here is on screen, like we are right now, and it's very, very hard for me to show you something and get the right feel of it. So what I've done is I've taken most of my portfolio and I've digitized it, and when I'm looking at a new prospect, I will put up, maybe 30 different images of the varied productions that we've done. So therefore they can see in that it's how beautiful they are. Maybe that will translate to them. And I have to say that in about 95% of the time, it leads to an introduction to come in to see them or to further the conversation. So I once thought that I was bombarding them with too much material, but it seems to work out fine. And you got to get off the fact that you're doing the sales thing, and we have to do the sales thing. We that's the only way you're going to get new business. The other thing is that I had a staff. We were in Union Square in Manhattan, and the pandemic happened, and everybody went their own way, and all of a sudden I was a solopreneur. The advantage to that is that I was no longer managing people, but the disadvantage to that is, what am I going to do now? And I wound up taking those images and posting them up on LinkedIn, and all of a sudden my client base went out of Manhattan and went nationwide and then went worldwide. So people were beginning to recognize the flavor of what was trying to produce, and recognize that. And it really just put me on the map after, at that point, 38 years of business. So, I mean, the sales has been the difficult edge of this, because I don't necessarily like doing it, but I certainly like showing my work. So therefore, I let that imagery speak for itself, very much like my end product. It speaks for itself. It is telling you that this is quality, this is thought that was put into doing this production. Perhaps you've never seen it again. And the attention to detail is great. I mean, I hope they're getting other, let's say, influencer boxes, or they're looking at other signage, because now they have something to compare it to. And, in the opportunity to have the right budgets and to go further with every single thing that you produce, only allows me to slowly get to the top of the mountain. And that's where we put ourselves. I wasn't working to get there. I was just doing what I do, which is perfecting the next project.
Yeah, and that's why, to me, I mean, you heard in the intro to this episode, when I think about your work, David, I can't help but think of that term of a master of your craft. And I want to go back to something, sticking to that sales topic, is something that you said earlier in the conversation that I don't want to gloss over, is that you called out a lot of times your clients don't know what they don't know. And I would argue that that's also part of your superpowers, is that 42 years of being in the industry. Also, part of your sales advantage is the fact that you can help fill in those gaps of things that they don't even realize. How much of what you do is education? Because we all, and consumers, we certainly don't understand the intricacies of your market. How much does that educational component factor into the way you talk to people who you're interacting with?
I'd say 100% of what I do is geared to educating the client. And as I said prior, we don't have the sales reps who walk around anymore in Manhattan, and we don't have, the Midwest and such don't have the local salespeople doing it. So I go into it with the idea that we're going to elevate this conversation. It's without having an education, without educating. It might not happen with this production with that client, but it could happen with the next one because we're planting a seed. We're letting them know what could be. And it also might halt them in giving a production to another vendor because now they want to use the services that I do. And, this also works not only with me, with designer clients, but I also have other printing companies that I do work for as well. Why? Because they don't necessarily want to handle a production. So, ultimately I'll bill them in the end, but I have that experience that I might have produced something, a couple of years ago, and they don't have any reference to how to produce it the right way. So they'll call up and say, hey, we really don't know how to produce this. Can you help us with it? So we're really playing both sides here, and I'm educating them too. The last part of this really is what's happening in the future. I mean, what I do and what I preach right now and why I try to push the envelope on everything is because we want a younger community to come into this industry, and we want them to be able to start from the point of what I know, to understand craftsmanship, to understand how to work with your vendors, how to speak with your clients. And it becomes a very easy process because none of that was really available to me when I started, but I'm here and I've begun to, over the course of the last 5 years, is really educate. I'm an influencer. I've done webinars. I've written articles, and I do a podcast as well. And it's just really to put information out there and help other people achieve what they're doing. Whether I produce it or not, it's to help them achieve what they're doing and to ask questions. And, that's the way that we begin to really begin to hone in on a better quality production.
Yeah, David, it's so cool to hear your perspective on these things because I think that, well, I'll back up a second. I think that all too often in the world of entrepreneurship, we celebrate overnight successes, but I will be totally transparent while we're on the air, David, in the fact that I think it's the old heads that need to be celebrated in the world of entrepreneurship because you have seen trends come and go. You have seen fads come and go. And all along the way, there were influencers like the Gary V's of the world saying, you have to be on Snapchat, like that's the only way to succeed with your business in 2015 or whatever year that was. And so all of these things come and go, but David, you've navigated all those twists, turns, ups, downs, macro trends, micro trends. You've navigated all of those. Normally I'm the old head in a lot of these conversations. I've been in the game for 18 years. I started my first business when I was just a teenager, and so I've seen so many of those things, but along the way, I've been podcasting, for example, since 2008. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say, oh, podcasting is dead. There's too many podcasts. Or email marketing is dead. David, email marketing has been dead for 20 years and it continues to work today. I would imagine in your industry, you've heard people cry out, printing is dead. All of these needs are dead. So many different things are dead. You've persisted and you've proven that they're not dead. How have you seen these macro and micro trends come and go? And how do you make sense of it? Because I would imagine 40 plus years of experience gives you such a level-headed approach to all the things that people want to freak out about.
So we're going to look at 9/11. We're going to look at 2008. We're going to look at the pandemic, because to those points, prior to 9/11, I had 4 people working for me in a beautiful office. And then 9/11 happened and we basically lost our client base. And what my goal was after that, we had gotten an SBA loan, is to develop some sort of promotion that I could not only promote myself, but I could also help promote my clients. And we did a deck of cards, and every card was designed by a different designer, and then there was a legend on the inside that said who the designer was and introduced them as well. And to this day, people still refer back to that promotion, but we had to reinvent ourselves at that time, and the shift of what we did changed. So, here I am beginning to learn where I had to learn new technique and also dig into how I was going to get it out there, which was really picking the right networking groups and to be able to have a forum, to be able to show what I do, and also to listen to other people and help to inspire me, because somebody might say one thing to you that unlocks the door to you making a great presentation. And I just have always really listened. When 2008 happened, we were doing really well. And then 2009, we were hit and everything was stopped. And once again, I had a family, I had young boys, and I had to really consider what I was going to do. And that led us really deep in a financial hole. And, I had gone to my folks and I had said, hey, I need to borrow some money. And my dad said, you need to figure this out for yourself. You need to dig in and you need to figure it out. And I began to really look at the work I had been doing over the last few years prior to 2009. And they were all luxury based, mainly luxury based, higher end productions. And I began to join networking groups that would work around luxury components. And I wound up landing one production for Tiffany that completely took us out of that hole, and made us extremely profitable, and also put us on the board as being, a company to work with. And the last was the pandemic. And once again, here I am, no more staff, got rid of the office. What am I going to do? At that point, I was 60 years old. And do I pull the plug? Do I just retire? But what I figured I would do is, all right, so, I have all these productions that I've done over the course of, at that point, 38 years. And I began to put one at a time up on LinkedIn. And then people began to have conversations with me. And it had me realize the quality of my work, and that a great deal of my audience had never seen anything like it before. So, here is an opportunity that in the absolute bottom of the bowl of being able to pull yourself out of it and just expressing who you are, what you do, and how you can help people. And people were very, very attracted to that. A woman on the West Coast, as a result of LinkedIn, began to make videos of my work. A publication asked me to write a few articles for them, which I did. And then I was asked to do the podcast. And from what I understand, the podcast is in 146 countries right now. So my email, once a new episode comes out, is blasted from people all over the world. And that's got me a recognition. So, the thing is, as an entrepreneur, you have to continually try, as I said, do better. Just do better. You're going to face some, times where you're going to feel depressed, or that, you haven't hit the mark that you want to hit, or it's harder to get there. But if you act upon it and you try new things, you never know what's going to come back at you.
Yeah, David. Oh, I feel like you're really displaying a masterclass in entrepreneurship in today's conversation, because there's so many ingredients that I want to dive into, but I'm going to go somewhere with you here on the air that I've never asked anyone this question in over 1,200 episodes, but I trust fully that you're the right person to talk to our audience about this, and that is quitting. You talked about digging in, and it's so clear to me how core that is to who you are and how you operate as an entrepreneur and as a leader. But at the same time, just me being an entrepreneur for 18 years, you being an entrepreneur for 40 plus years, you and I both also know how often you come to that point where you're just like, should I pull the plug? Should I quit? Is this still worth it? Would it be way easier to just get a job? Would it be easier to just sell? Would it be easier to just do so many other options? It sounds to me like you and I have just had enough sample points where we realize all it takes is one thing to turn it around. All it takes is one connection, one project, one engagement, one LinkedIn post. Somebody sees it. All of a sudden things change. For you use that example with Tiffany. So David, I'm going to totally put you on the spot for the first time in 1,200 plus episodes. Where does your mind go? What do those moments of despair, of thinking to yourself, maybe I should quit, what do those moments look like, and how do you turn those around?
It's really simple because I've reflected on that so many times. I had at one point been asked to join a company, and it would have been a great relationship. But just as we were approaching the attorneys and really going to move this forward, a voice came in the back of my head saying, if you're going to do this for him, do it for yourself. In other words, the grass is greener where you water it. And, sometimes we get so lax and full of ourselves because we're doing well that you kind of like fall into a pattern. And unless you have something that will encourage you every single day to do something different, then you won't have that opportunity unless you do so. So, I thought, all right, so I'll go work for somebody else. And then I thought about, well, I'm going to have somebody barking orders at me. I can't do that. I can't. I would much rather refocus, dig in. I don't know what all my possibilities are because I, to date, haven't reached those possibilities. So the only thing I can do is to create, be creative, share those ideas, and that will help propel me to whatever is going on next. And, in case in point, I recently won an award for a book, a safari book that we did, and a client took 8 of his clients on safari, and they all took photos out of their iPhone, and they had some other vendor produce a legacy book. And they weren't clients at the time. They were clients of clients. And when we went and I was called up saying, oh, you got to go visit our client. They have a book that they did. They're really unhappy with it. Go to see them. And I happened to see them that afternoon and walked up. And I began to express the faults of the other vendor and how it should have been done, educating, how it should have been done, but based on what their budget is, I'd like to see how far we can take this. And they said, you have carte blanche to do what you want to do. We have a pretty high budget. These are high-end profile clients that we have. And, I was able to do things that I've never done before. I've dreamed about doing them, but I was able to put it together and do it. Well, that is inspiration for me. That only makes me want to do better next time. And believe it or not, as a result of winning those awards on that piece, have been given more opportunities to do more legacy books for other people, other companies, where I'm being allowed to say, let's go in this direction. Why not? And, as long as your budget can withstand that, then let's move forward and create something quite unique. So in the answer to your question, if you get into a slump, or I should say, when I've gotten into slumps and I've seen things, whether because of economics or disaster or what have you, is to then dig into what you want to do, show and preach what you want to do. And, if you throw enough spaghetti on the wall, it'll stick. So in that instance, it has. And for me, it was more out of desperation. And then, a year later, you turn around and you look at the past year and say, oh, I can't believe I just did that. I can't believe I just walked out of that situation. But we can. I mean, as an entrepreneur, as a solopreneur, you have to consistently evolve. You have to consistently educate yourself. And in doing that, it's going to, the light will come on, and you might say, I really can't do this for my industry, but I can do something similar for it, and let's introduce it. And that introduction just might go someplace that you never expected it to go.
Boom. I love that mindset. And I'm so appreciative of you sharing these real world stories and examples from your own experiences with our worldwide audience. I agree with you. It's so cool to look back at how far we can impact and how much we can reach. You and I, both of our shows, 140 plus countries, people all over the world, getting the benefits of you and I continuing to show up. And that's one thing that I always remind myself of is if I stop showing up, it just means I don't get to impact and serve the people who I so deeply care about. So huge kudos to you, David. Although I feel like you just made your life more difficult because now I have no idea how you're going to answer this last question. And that is, what's your best piece of advice for listeners? Knowing that we're being listened to by both entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs at all different stages of their own growth journeys. And also knowing that you are very much one of us, a lifelong entrepreneur at this point. What's that one piece of advice that you want to leave them with today?
Number one is definitely become an influencer at your profession. Try to get, I'm going to say for somebody my age, try to get that information out, educate the younger people that are coming up. Be open and free to share information. There are no secrets anymore. Industry is not going to survive if we don't give out that information. And in giving out that information, you never know where their next idea is going to come from or how it's going to help to influence them in doing what they're doing, or how it's going to affect their clients as to maybe changing the way a production is done, putting a different box on the shelf, maybe looking at a brochure and doing a brochure different. Or this is really for any industry. Educate. Feel free to go out and educate and try to develop things in a creative manner. As for me, on an artisan level, try to explain how you created it, what the thought process was in putting it together, because that influence goes a long, long way. And I wish I had somebody who would say, take a look at this, and this is why I did it this way, and this is why I did it that way. And for me, I was left to figure it out and experiment on my own, for better, for worse. I'll say this. If there's anybody out there that would like to just have a conversation with me on any level for what it is, it could be personal, it could be business, I'll be more than happy to speak with anybody, because once again, you never know where that conversation is going to go, and I don't know where that conversation is going to go, and that's really what I look for. I look for inspiration. So let's open the door for that.
Yes, David, I knew that you would massively over-deliver in our conversation today, and you have 100% lived up to that. I want to call out, part of your advice, what I'm really hearing is it's so much fun for all of us to be able to show up and look for that permission, which I feel like one of those secrets that you revealed is that we actually don't need permission, and we just get to feel free, as you put it, to just show up and be of service to others. And listeners, I'm going to call all of you out, is that if you are looking for an excuse, you're looking for that permission, hop onto your LinkedIn and tag David and say, hey, I just heard David Drucker on a podcast talk about this, so I feel empowered to share XYZ with all of you. Blame it on David. If you want to show up, blame it on David. I feel like he's just given all of us permission to show up that way. And David, you so generously, you are such an embodiment of one of our founding principles behind this show of a rising tide lifts all boats. You're an embodiment of that in the way that you support and uplift so many other people, not just entrepreneurs. It's so clear to me in all the things I've read about you today, how much people lean on you for your expertise, for your generosity, for your abundance mindset, which we've gotten to experience today. So you've got to drop some links on us. For listeners who want to take you up on that, where the heck should they go from here? How can they see your great work in action on the internet?
I really haven't been using Instagram all that much, though. My handle on that is Guru of Printing. It's Guru of Printing, but mainly on LinkedIn, which is David Drucker. My company is High Resolution. That's how you're going to find me on there. It's a guy who looks like this. There are other David Druckers, but I'm the only guy who looks like this. And you could also just look up Guru of Printing, and I'll come up. But the other day I went on to grok.com and I just put in David Drucker printer, and it's unbelievable the history of what came up on there. And I think the best way for people to find me is to go onto LinkedIn, and conversations can be had from there. And I look forward to those opportunities as well.
Heck yes. And listeners, we don't want to see you get lost in finding this one and only David Drucker. So we're dropping those links down below in the show notes, no matter where it is that you're tuning into today's episode. So don't worry about clicking or searching. Although you're right, David, Grok and AI is a podcaster's best friend when it comes to research. But listeners, you can just scroll right on down, click through. You'll find all of David's links there. Otherwise, David, on behalf of myself and all the listeners worldwide, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you too.